Welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Schmidt. I head up the research and grounds here at Delights Nursery, Juniper Level Botanic Gardens. And today we're talking about fall garden maintenance. It's kind of early fall, I guess you could say. How many people here have a garden? Most of you. How many people here love to garden? All right. Well, one of my favorite things about gardening is that there's always something that you can do in the garden. It's more of the process of gardening for me than it is standing around and doing nothing in the garden. It's my enjoyment comes from maintaining it as much as seeing it and watching it grow. So this time of year, there are certainly a few things happening. For one, most woody plants, most of your canopy, most of your trees and shrubs, they're transitioning from summer growth, and spring growth obviously is long gone, and now they're starting to focus on roots. So if you want to transplant or if you want to add new things to your garden, new woody plants, now's a great time to do it. Either to transplant a woody plant from over here to here, or to buy that number 15 gallon container and get it in the ground. Good time to do that. This is the time of year when some of those late spring, early summer blooming plants, they're totally finished. Maybe there are some things that you do not want to have set seed. And so some things you can cut back. Some things you can, as you're walking around your garden, you might see things that are flopping onto other plants. A good time of year not only to audit that, to cut things back that need to be cut back, that might be going towards dormancy, dieback plants especially, to get them off of something else, but also for almost every other plant in the garden, not just woody plants, but many other herbaceous things, not including your tropicals. It's a good time of year to move them as well. So as you're walking around, you see the things that did too well in comparison to their neighbor. Now's a good time to move a lot of those things. Again, colocasias, maybe hedychiums, some of those tropical leafed things. Let's hold off until the crabgrass starts growing again next year to move those. But let's walk around. We'll look at a few things, and as you see things that you might recognize from your own garden, or see plants that you would wonder how you would maintain, feel free to just fire away and ask me what you would do with this plant. But I'll point out a few things. Some of the trickiest plants or some of the perennials in the garden that it's easy to make a mistake with and that it's best not to prune are some evergreen perennials that have 2-year leaves that last 2 years instead of just one. So aspidistra is a very good example of this. I have made the mistake in my own garden of cutting all of the leaves back in May just as the new foliage is emerging. And that actually damages the plant. They're not able to get all of the energy that they need from those 1-year-old leaves. So the best time of year to prune these back is actually right about now. So if you look down in here, see the garden crew is so good at this that I don't have anything to prune for you today because they got it all. They are on top of it. But if you look closely, you'll see these little stubs. All of those were 2-year-old leaves that look tired. They're looking to be about done with their usable life. But whenever a plant puts up a leaf, it's putting up a solar panel and it's making an investment. It needs enough time and the right conditions to get a return on that investment. And if you remove that leaf before it's time, then the plant ends up with a loss. And so now is the right time. 2-year-old aspidistra leaves have served their purpose, and now is a great time to cut those back. Other plants, more from a design aspect, Most hostas, a lot of their leaves are looking pretty tired, but it's not necessarily a good time yet to cut them back, because most hostas, not all, but most hostas are not going to put up new leaves anymore this year. The exception being Hosta plantaginea and the hybrids with plantaginea, which we do have here in the nursery for sale today. That species of hosta actually puts up new leaves this time of year. Very, very cool. But a hosta like this, I wouldn't cut it back yet. Wait until it's just too ugly to look at. Let's see, what else do we have today? Sure.
I've got a fairly large clump, and I was wondering if I could divide it.
Great time of year to do just that.
Okay. Just dig it up.
Dig it up.
Get some roots. Move it.
Yep, treat it. You can actually dig. Aspidistras are about the same difficulty to move as, let's say, a daylily. Just get that shovel in there, chop it up, make sure you've got several eyes, and then move that plug wherever you want. If you're moving it with the leaves on, which I would suggest doing, it might need some support to stay upright through the year or until it really puts down new roots. But it is a good time of year to move aspidistra. Yeah.
I've got a lantana that's really overgrown, and I'd like to move it.
You can move it. That's not a bad one to chop back, because it'll have some time remaining this year to reflush some.
Yeah, it still has some flowers on it.
Yeah, but it's getting, perhaps for a marginally hardy plant like lantana, 7B hardy, sometimes they're 7A, the hardiest clones are. It's getting maybe a little bit late, but you could probably move it, and you could probably cut it back.
When's the better time? Should we wait?
You're going to probably want to cut it back anyway if that's the issue. I mean, if it's too big, then you might as well give it a try. One plant I would not suggest cutting back yet would be any cycads. Cycad, when we get much below 15 or 20 degrees, it's going to toast all of those leaves anyway. So unless you have a dead leaf that is no longer connected to the plant, I wouldn't touch it. If a leaf's dead, the plant won't know it's gone anyway, so you might as well cut it at any time of year. But some things, I wouldn't cut back a cycad, even if it's getting onto something else. With a plant like that, I'd rather cut back whatever else it's getting on to. You can always feel free to cut back dead flowering stems, like hosta stems. That's an easy call. There's really never a time when that's hurtful to the plant. You can strategically cut back other plants to keep them from seeding, however. Again, a lot of those early summering plants, especially in the aster family, those seeds are becoming ripe now, if they haven't already. And so this might be the time to cut back seed heads that you don't want to seed around the garden. It's always something to think about. And a plant often will put energy, it will prioritize putting energy into its seed production over putting energy into its leaves, into its offsetting, into new flowers. And so a lot of times cutting back old seed heads as they're ripening, before that plant is able to put all that energy into it, is going to free up that energy maybe to go into a new flush of leaves or flowers, especially with herbaceous plants. And many deciduous ferns, like Ethereum. Most Ethereums that we grow around here are deciduous. They do die back to the ground in the winter. If you've got some pretty beat up fern fronds, feel free to just pop those out, clip those off. The more of that, the more aggressive you are with some deciduous ferns, the more likely they are to put out a few new fronds before frost. And I would say that we're getting almost too late in the year to do that, but we're still, I think, in that window to be pretty aggressive with our cutbacks of tired deciduous fern fronds.
How do you know if, okay, when the plant looks bad, how do I know the difference between I just killed it
Mm-hmm.
and it's just changing? Because my yard, there's a lot dead there.
Part of that's just living out in your garden, knowing what a plant does through the seasons. There's a lot of plants like hostas that are getting pretty tired this time of year. And you've done everything that you need to do, and that hosta is as healthy as it has ever been. But it's getting towards the end of its year, of its cycle. Other plants, like some aroids like Amorphophallus, down. No matter what you do, the leaves are going to tip over and they will go away. The roots, in the case of Amorphophallus, the roots also will die. You'll have no roots and no shoots here pretty soon, no matter what you've done. So part of it is just experience. Plenty of resources. Our website, of course, any plant that we sell or have sold, we might have some insight about what to do, what it's going to do, its life cycle. And don't get too attached to any one plant ever, because part of being a great gardener is killing a whole lot of plants.
Oh, I'm a fabulous gardener.
There we go, see? Great. So deciduous ferns, yes. However, many evergreen ferns, especially ones that seem to grow a little slower, Dryopteris seboldii, as I learned today, is one that if you cut back the leaves, even if they're a little beat up, you might kill that plant. And so sometimes just let it be.
Is that the brilliance? Is that?
No, that's a different Dryopteris. Yeah, Dryopteris seboldii is kind of a weird. It doesn't look like other ones. Perosia, some of those big leather leaf ferns that they've obviously invested a lot of energy into that leaf, into that frond. You might want to think twice before cutting it back if it has a lot of energy left in it that the plant might be able to cannibalize for new leaves. It might not have made that return on its investment yet, and you might be setting the plant back.
I want to ask about hydrangeas.
Sure.
Cutting them back.
Mhm.
Which ones to do? I mean, no, there's different kinds. It's kind of complicated, but
Somewhat. It's again, a lot of resources online. The blue ones, those kinds of things, you can generally. Those bloom more on new wood, to my understanding. Oak leaf hydrangeas, of course, bloom on old wood. So any that bloom on newer wood, right now is not a bad time to prune them if you don't like the look of the spent bracts. And, like behind you there, that one. If you need to cut back some of the bracts, you can. Honestly, I don't have much experience with this particular one, so I wouldn't know if I was going to cut that all the way back or not, what would happen. Here are some Amorphophallus, like I was mentioning earlier. They're tipping over, they're getting tired, but that's just its time. We did everything we needed to do to make this plant very happy, and it's just done. So that's about all I have. Does anybody have any more questions about things that they can do in the fall for their garden?
What about like hellebores? They're looking bad, like this one here.
yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, the hellebores in this garden, in juniper level botanic garden, we usually prune those leaves back late winter. And by late winter, we're talking January, early February. We want those leaves to stay on there really until they start to throw up flower buds, which is a January, February thing for most of them. These are a little beat up. Perhaps they had a little bit too much sunlight. Maybe they dried out at some point. That's generally what's going to cause it in the garden. If there's any way to keep these and to put up with those leaves, they are still going to they're going to photosynthesize and feed the plant. So if there's any way to keep them on as long as possible, that's the best call. And then clip them off as those new flower buds are beginning to swell. And as far as, let's fast forward another month or two. Just a quick thought about leaf cleanup and raking leaves, that sort of thing. That's more of an aesthetic call. So I know that there's a lot of things like on Facebook now about don't rake your yard ever. In fact, don't ever mow your grass and don't do anything in your garden because it's all about bugs and everything else. That's partially true. When we rake the leaves, we rake up the dormant structures of wintering insects, good ones and bad ones. So it's one of those balances. It also, most plants are self-mulching. Let's face it. So it's not all bad. It is an aesthetic choice, and it is an ecological choice, as far as the insect life. Some fungus, some bacteria, they will also winter. Nematodes are another one that they might be a problem for you. And so if you have an issue, let's say with southern blight, that's one, when you see it, and it's kind of past southern blight season, but when you see it, you need to get all the mulch up and a little bit of the soil even, put it in a trash bag and put it in the dumpster. So there are times when you absolutely need to clean up all the leaves you can. But for the most part, here in this garden, we do clean up most of our leaves. But for us, it's an aesthetic decision, and it is a decision made on behalf of many of our tiny plants here. We've got a lot of plants that are not going to be able to compete with leaf mulch. However, in most home gardens, that's not the case. If you've got larger perennials or bigger bulbs that are just going to shoot up through 5 or 6 inches of leaves from the previous season, hey, that might be great. It might be a good way to keep some of the weeds down. It might help keep the soil cooler as the season goes on and the soil gets hot, hold some of the moisture in. So there's pros and cons to leaf cleanup. Of course.
Anything special about oak trees? Because I hear they never break down, the leaves never break down. And I'm surrounded by these 100-foot tall oak trees.
Yeah.
And
well,
my yard gets
I tell you
filled
what.
with them.
We're
talking a lot of oak leaves.
For winter open house, bring me some of the leaves of that oak that were on that tree 40 years ago.
Well, I can't wait 40 years.
No, 40 leaves that were there 40 years ago. They do break down. They might.
Very, very, very slowly.
It depends on the amount of moisture. That's a big one. If there's moisture in the ground, they will break down pretty quickly. The more life that's in the soil, microbial life, they'll break down much more quickly. And also they'll break down some of those compounds. You hear things like tannic acid, stuff that is in oak leaves. But that's broken down by the microscopic life of this soil. Same thing like walnut trees. If you can clean up the walnuts, you probably will want to do that. But you hear that it kills all the plants under it because it makes an herbicide of its own. That's most prevalent in the fruits. Clean those up, you'll be all right. Keep the soil moist and mulched, and the microbes actually break down. Juglone or whatever compound it has that is actually, it kills other plants. But your big cutback, stuff like that, in my garden and in this garden, some things you wait until they absolutely freeze. And they're done. The plant doesn't know they're gone. Do you have any more questions?
I have 3 questions.
Okay,
Please
fire away.
don't go insane.
Too late.
Welcome to my club.
Right?
There's this yellow weed that's appearing. It's like a string. It feels like sticky string. It just keeps winding over everything. And I took it to have someone look at it. He told me I needed to burn everything. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I need to get a second opinion.
Is that there's a parasitic weed that can do that, but I think it's specific to certain kinds of plants.
It is hitting everything in my garden. It is just going from here to here to here to here.
I would.
And wrapping over everything. And I
Yeah.
keep pulling it out.
Okay.
And it feels like I said, sticky string. It sticks together.
I'd send a picture into the NC State Extension, and they should be able to answer that for you.
Because I thought burning everything down. I'm not a pyromaniac.
It works. I mean, it does have that effect. It'll finish.
everything
It'll
down.
work. Yeah.
Is it pull it and then burn it, or you burn it right there?
Well, I mean, yeah, nuclear strike. You know, if it gets down deep enough, but yeah, napalm works. That's true.
Man after my own heart.
What's question number 2?
Edgeworthia.
Okay.
It's been dying off branch by branch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm left with one branch at this point. Should I? Originally there was a tree and we cut it down, so now it's in the sun. I'm assuming it's the sun that's annoying it.
It doesn't. They don't mind. They can handle quite a bit of sun if they have quite a bit of water.
Okay.
If they dry out in the sun, they wilt and then they will decline. So my recommendation is move it now.
Okay.
This is the time to do it. So you can move it, bring it back into the shade, or plant the shade right back in there. And so in a year or two, it can be in some shade. In the meantime, if you want to leave it there, make sure that it is moist.
Honey, guess what I want you to do next week?
Yep.
Third question.
Yeah.
So when I'm working the front yard, the front garden, there's nothing. There are no worms. There's nothing. And I've gone down like 6 inches. I've flipped it over. And there's nothing. I'm happy not to bump into worms. However, I do know the plants and stuff need it. What do I do to make it
They
live
need.
soil? I feel like it's dead soil.
You need moisture, and you need an organic layer. Those two things are going to be best. That's why we use triple shred here. Triple shred mulch. It looks good, but another thing that triple shred does is it breaks down. It rots away. We want our mulch to rot away because that is feeding the soil, and then the soil can feed the plants. So if you feel like you have dead soil, check and see if it gets too dry. That's number one, or stays too wet. Both extremes. But most of the beneficial aerobic microbes are going to need consistently moist soil, soil that has air in it, and mulch of some kind, so that there's like extreme humidity layer just out of sight under the mulch. And that's where earthworms they're going to prefer that. But then the microbes, the things you need, that there's a couple billion of them in a teaspoon. That's those kind of things. If you don't have that, then your garden, except for a few plants, is going to struggle.
Okay, we put compost down. So should I put more compost and then the triple bark, or just the triple bark instead of more compost?
Watch the moisture first. That would start there. If you've got compost, keep it mulched. If you see bare soil, then you're not going to, it's unlikely, unless you're watering every day, to have a large population of beneficial microbes in it.
Okay.
All right.
You've been wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.